Enthusiastically welcome tonight's speaker, Les.
Hi everyone, my name is Les Stukenberg and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Les.
Welcome to the newcomers. You're the most important person in this room. And congratulations to all the birthdays, chip takers. My sobriety date is May 27th, 1996. I guess it's a sobriety date because that's the day I got sober. And you'll hear why maybe sometimes I question that, but I have not had a drink or an illegal drug in my body since that day. So I have a sponsor, I have a home group, I have commitments, and I am completely dedicated to this program. Now, wasn't always that way. Welcome to our friends from Bullhead City. You're a part of my story. So, welcome. Thanks for coming over. I grew up in an average middle-class family, and what I can tell you is that every 2 years we moved, and I wasn't in the military. Now, my dad's an alcoholic, or was an alcoholic, and I don't know if we moved because he lost his job, or if I just never had the chance to ask him. But every 2 years, so what that did was the ism in alcoholism developed very early for me. Because every 2 years you're having to figure out who your friend group is. You had to adjust to that friend group. And so I was like a chameleon. I was never able to be myself. And, for that, it was just the way it was. We lived in some nice areas. We lived in Cooperstown, New York, where the Baseball Hall of Fame is. We lived at the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. We had a place at Copper Mountain. We lived in Winter Park. So I lived in some really cool places. But when you're adjusting yourself to be what you picture someone else to be, that's where the ism really started for me. I didn't really drink, I'd have a sip every now and then, but until I was in high school. And then in high school, I still remember this vividly, that when I was a junior, I was dating a senior, and on senior ditch day, they decided, well, we're going to pick up Les. So they picked me up, they handed me a beer, and they said, you have got a lot of catching up to do. And from that moment on, that's the way I drank. I drank for the effect. Because I did not want to, I wanted to feel included. I wanted to feel like I was part of. And I didn't always like the taste, but I liked the effect. And for a lot of years, for a few years, it was fun. And then going through high school, I had a Ford Country Squire station wagon. And the beauty of the Ford Country Squire station wagon is in the back. There's a luggage compartment, for those of you old enough to remember those, and it fit a keg perfectly. So every weekend, guess who was always in charge of getting the beer? Colorado at that time, you could drink at 18. The state of Colorado, in their infinite wisdom, decided to make a mistake on my driver's license and added a couple years onto my birth date there. And so, I was drinking from the time I was 17 till, when I finally became legal at 21. When you have that opportunity, when you're an alcoholic like me, you use it. Every day, during high school, it was weekends. And then as soon as I got out of high school, I went to college up in Tacoma, Washington. I lasted a whole year, barely. because my major was partying. I found the people there that drank like I did. And that's heavily, and when you're in college like that, it starts out on the weekend. Then it becomes, so it'd be Friday and Saturday night. But then all of a sudden, let's have a party on Thursday night. We'll call it the Thursday night club. And let's have a party on Sunday night. We'll call it the Sunday night club. And and we just kept expanding that. And with that expansion became, less not going to classes anymore. I figured out early on that I had paid for this college, and so if I dropped a class within a certain time, I could get a refund, and that would pay for my drinking. So, that's what I did for a year. And then I came back to Colorado, and when I came back, it was in the late 70s, and so it was just, I moved to Winter Park, Colorado, and this is the only time I'm gonna mention drugs twice. It was always snowing at my house. So if you get that, but what that cocaine did was it allowed me to drink more and longer. And that's really, the extent of it. So, from there, and through all this, I'm going through relationships, I'm going through jobs, I don't really have, I was kind of aimless. And so there, I developed I have what this professional photographer was a natural eye. And I was like, man, I'm just doing way too much cocaine, and I need to take care of that problem. It wasn't I was drinking too much. It was I was doing way too much cocaine. So I asked him. I said, well, what would you recommend? He goes, well, you could spend $20 grand a year and go to school, or you can join one of the military services, and they'll train you how to be a photographer. On all the technical aspects of photography. And so me being the smart alcoholic that I am said, I'm going to get paid to learn how to do photography. So I joined the Navy, and I spent 7 years in the Navy. And what that 7 years did was it feared me into quitting the cocaine. So, cocaine was kind of out of the picture. But it allowed me to drink more. So whenever we would, I was, my first 3.5 years were on the aircraft carrier John F. Kennedy. We did multiple deployments. We went to Rio de Janeiro. We went throughout the Mediterranean. We went to the North Atlantic. We went throughout the Caribbean. And in every one of those places, I would take leave. So I didn't have to stand duty when we were in port, and I would get hammered. That's what I did. I didn't really see a lot of the world because I was mostly drunk. But, I've been there. So anyway, 7 years, and then I wanted to go to the West Coast. My detailer said no. I said, I'm getting out. My CEO at the time, they had spent a lot of money on getting me a security clearance. And alcoholics can get a TSSBI security clearance. And that's like the top. And anyway, so from there, so I got out, and I immediately went back to drinking and cocaine. And so I was living in Virginia Beach, and I was working in a nightclub there, the Peppermint Beach Club, just partying my brains out. And I got 2 DUIs in 2 weeks, and I said, you know what? Virginia's the problem. I need to leave. And so, so I think let's consider this. I did a geographic from Colorado into the Navy, which took me from San Diego, from Colorado to San Diego to Key West, Florida to Virginia. But it was still a geographic because I was trying to run from something. And then in Virginia, after the 2 DUIs, I said, okay, it's Virginia's problem, so I'm leaving. So my dad said, well, I'll help you out. Why don't you go to California? So I go across country to California. I'm working there. Again, working nightclubs or country club bars. Again, perfect place to drink. And just getting hammered every single night. And there, I got another DUI. But the amazing thing about this I forgot, I did get a DUI in Colorado, but that was back in the time where they just kind of swept it under, they said, oh, we'll just reduce it and you pay a fine. And so 4 DUIs, last one was in California, and when I went before the judge happened to be a member of the country club where I worked at. And so that DUI mysteriously disappeared. But I still have it. I mean, I know I have it. I personally have it, but I just never had to suffer any consequences from it. And then I moved to Arizona. Went to work in a hotel down in Scottsdale. And the environment there was, I wouldn't say they encouraged, but they allowed drinking on premises, so you could go into the bar after you were done, and then from there I would go and finish it off at my local neighborhood bar because I didn't want to get another DUI, and it was close enough for me to get home, and that's what I did every day for 10 years. Every day. I would get home, I would do the sway and pass out, and I'd get up in the morning, go to work, and it was just a constant cycle. Weekends I thought were fun, but the whole reality of it was I worked with some really cool people, and they were all regular people, but I was like way out there. And it got to the point where they just didn't invite me to come along anymore. And with that, so because I worked in this hotel, and the hotel did golf packages, one of the golf courses was doing a hotel appreciation golf course. Now I'm going to back up a month, 2 months, whatever it was. But one of those nights when I was swaying in my room before passing out in my bed, I looked up and I said, God, this is the way I'm going to be the rest of my life. Just a freaking, and I used the other word, alcoholic. The only exposure I've ever had to Alcoholics Anonymous or whatever was when I was in the Navy. I was trying to get out of trouble for something. And they said, maybe you should go to the Adult Children of Alcoholics meeting. And me being kind of a sick person, what I did was I took the little bit of knowledge that I got in that one meeting and I blamed my dad for all my problems. And even so much as to say, to tell him that he's the reason why I drink so much. And that kind of ruined our relationship. I mean, my dad was a hard worker. We lived in nice places. We always had a nice house. But we had like 3 pictures of dad as kids. We had the dad when he gets up, the dad when he's about half in the bag, and then the dad when he gets home and he's really in the bag. And you never know which one you're going to get. But for me to do that, looking back now, was so unfair of me. And I did make my amends to him before he passed. Anyway, so back to where I was at, Scottsdale, playing golf in a hotel appreciation golf tournament. I'm playing with some coworkers and my boss, and my deal was when I woke up, I would grab a 6-pack or a 12-pack, probably a 12-pack because a 6-pack probably wouldn't be enough. But I also, Goldschlager was popular then, or was for me. A 5th of Goldschlager, and off to the golf course I went. And probably about, I don't know, 13th, 14th hole, I decided it'd be funny if I mooned the tournament director. And, the look on the tournament director's face was not fun, was not funny. And if you're an alcoholic like me, you've had that feeling in the pit of your stomach saying, oh my God, I've crossed a line. And then I looked over at my boss, and he's just shaking his head. Didn't say a word to me, just shaking his head. And that feeling in the pit of my stomach got deeper. And from that moment on, I don't believe, because, a beer just didn't taste good. That Monday morning, my big boss called me into his office, and he's a heavy drinker. Maybe he was a candidate for these rooms. I don't know. It's not for me to say. But he said, Les, we all love to have a good time here, but you go to the extreme. He goes, we want to help you. And I looked at him and I said, Jim, I will do anything not to feel this way anymore. And so I went down to a 28-day treatment center in Central, well, actually it's downtown Scottsdale. And when I checked in there, they do that intake thing. And I told them how much I drank. I told them how much I did. And they said, oh, well, you'd be a good candidate for intensive outpatient. And I looked at them, and for the first time that I knew, I could be honest, and I could say, no, you do not understand. I need to be checked into this facility. Because I knew intensive outpatient, I would play that game. I'd drink between whatever I had to do. I would, because I was just not in the right state of mind. I did not have the mental fortitude to stay sober. So anyway, so 28 days, got out, and I immediately went to the North Scottsdale Fellowship Club. I went to, I started out, I went to a couple meetings a day, and then I got fired from that same job that wanted to help me because I did not know how to behave in a sober environment. And I accepted that. And it wasn't a bad firing or anything. It was just, they gave me a huge severance check because I'd been there for 10 years. I was their top producing salesperson. I was a national sales manager. I traveled for them. I was good at my job, but I was also miserable and I was a drunk. And so what that did, that was the biggest gift I could have gotten, because by getting fired from that job, I was able to go to the 7 a.m. meeting, to the noon meeting, to the 6 o'clock meeting, to the 8 o'clock meeting, and I could learn how to be sober. I could learn, I could throw myself into the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I did that for 2 years. I developed some great friendships. I saw when Wayne from Las Vegas was here. I'm sorry, Bob Darrell from Las Vegas was here. One of the guys that I got sober with came up from North Scottsdale. But, and it was cool to see him. Anyway, so I threw myself into the program. I had some great mentors. I had Mike Noser. Oh yeah, by the way, my sponsor is Mike Bennett. He's a great sponsor. He's my favorite sponsor. My only one. Anyway, so Mickey O'Connor took me under her wing. There was like this group of us, and we'd just go and we'd have fun. We'd go to meetings, we'd go to dances, we'd go have coffee, we'd go out to dinner. And what they were teaching me, this group, was how I can live sober. And that was what I really needed. I was just like a little kid. I didn't know. So, 2 years there, and then Everything's kind of working out. You know, I've started a new. I worked for a guy in a pool cleaning business, and then he would give me the ones that didn't fit into his little route because he wanted to, keep it condensed. So I'd be doing all these other ones. I got in a relationship, kind of, and everything was just like going great. Then my dad calls me up, and my dad had cancer, and he actually called me, and he said, Les, I really would like you to move to Bullhead City to help me with the hotel up there, because I'm worried that the cancer will come back and your mom won't have anyone here. And so this man, my dad, actually made the phone call to me and asked me to come help him and to help the family. I was never one to be a help around the family. And now he's asking me to do that. And that's when our relationship changed. Because he knew I was doing the deal. He knew that I was a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so, my sponsor at the time, I said, what do I do? I got this going for me, and this going for me, and this going for me. He goes, just do the next right thing. He goes, go home, pray about it, and do the next right thing. I did. The apartment complex that I lived in let me out of the lease, and I just signed it. They never do that. The girl that I was seeing said, no big deal. Go. And a guy offered to buy my pool cleaning business, all within like 2 days. I go, well, I guess I know what the next right thing is. So off I go to Bullhead City. Bullhead City's hot. Hot. And I got up there, I got involved in AA, kind of, but it wasn't Scottsdale. I didn't put the effort in. I thought, and this is, so this is where, the stinking thinking comes in. I thought I heard that your bottom isn't low enough, and you're going to go back out again. And that's not what they were saying. What they were saying was, let's get involved. But I didn't really want to hear it. So, but what happened was when I got to Bullhead City was I'd always had this dream of being a photojournalist. And I kept on looking at the newspapers up there in the Mojave Valley Daily News. And I would look at the photographs in there and go, man, I can do better than that. I can be better than that. So what I did was I put together a portfolio. I walked into the editor's office and I said, hey, can you use me? Because I can do better at these sports photos than your current one is. And he goes, well, I don't have a spot for you, but what I can do is I can hire you kind of, like a freelancer, and you pay you per published photo. And it wasn't a lot, but it was something. And then about a year and a half, or a year, I was up there for, a year and a half, 2 years. The photographer decided to leave at the same day. God's just working these miracles, and I'm just not really even aware of them. And the same day that my dad said, hey, we have an offer to buy the hotel, then my editor called me and said, hey, so-and-so just left. We'd like to offer you the job full time. Boom. Dream job. All because of God. Yeah. It was, stuff like that just doesn't happen to a drunk like me. Anyway, all of a sudden I'm in this dream job. I'm busy, the fire department up there loves me. They give me a pager so I can go out on the big calls in the middle of the night, and I'm just loving it. But what I started to do was I started to cut back on AA. because I was busy, because I had arrived. And you know, there I am, and everything's going good. And then I thought, well, I need to move. You know, after about a year and a half doing that, I said, I'm tired of Bullhead City. I need to go somewhere. So I started applying for other places, and I ended up in Prescott. And when I arrived in Prescott, I made the conscious decision, and I'm going to tell you that this is a scary thing. I made the conscious decision not to get involved in AA, not to go to meetings. I had become a normie. We know how that works out. So I was pretty successful, 19 years, working for the paper here. I started as a photographer. A year later, my boss left. They offered me the job of photo editor, so photographer, photo editor, and 19 years later, we parted ways. But what happened during those 19 plus years was that it's kind of like the inverse of the steps. First of all, you forget you had a spiritual awakening. And you don't try to carry this message to other alcoholics. Because remember, I made that conscious decision. And then the next thing is, the prayer and meditation kind of goes away. And then you stop taking inventory. So you're slowly, well, for me, my experience was that I slowly became extremely miserable. And it took 22 years for me to hit an emotional bottom. And that emotional bottom resulted from my wife telling me, you are just a sick person. My daughter telling me she didn't like me anymore. My daughter's 14. She probably didn't like anyone, but I know she wasn't liking me at that point in time. I was not being honest. I was doing this online gambling thing, and I was hiding it, and I was lying, and the only thing I didn't do was I didn't drink. That is the only thing I didn't do. Because at some point in time, and I believe it was back, when I looked up at God and said, this is the way I'm going to be the rest of my life, just a freaking alcoholic, that God said, the obsession of drink is lifted from you. Now, all the rest of the work I have to do. I have to have a spiritual awakening. I've got to work with newcomers. And I've come to find that out. So, I don't know, it was about 2 years ago, and I walked into the Saturday Night Live meeting over at Stepping Stones, and I said, hey, my name's Les, and I'm an alcoholic. And my friend John over there, and Paulie, many of you know Paulie, they came up after the meeting, and they gave me their phone numbers. They probably saved my life. They probably saved my life. In fact, they did save my life. And for that, I will be eternally grateful. From there, I started going to other meetings, Sunday Men's Stag. I met Mr. Bennett there. And we chatted. And then I came here, and I go to a lot of meetings now. I have, well, not a lot, 5 a week. But I have a commitment. I have sponsees. Well, a sponsee right now. And I'm working on that emotional sobriety. I am far from cured. And that's, I guess, what I've figured out is that through these last almost 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years, whatever it is, that it is an ongoing project for me to be a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, to be a sober member of my household. And so I'm of service. I go into treatment centers and I bring an AA meeting into treatment centers. That's a highlight of my week. And I don't know, I'm at the point now where I'm just kind of scratching the surface of having had that spiritual awakening. As a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics. And that was the thing that when I moved from Bullhead City to Prescott, I ignored. And for that, I'll stand up here and I'll apologize. Because that's not right. Because for those first 4 years, I just took. I look back on it now. That's what I did. I just took. I took sobriety as this gift that I could do with as I wanted to. And I didn't follow through on it. I was not a help to newcomers. And now I try and do that. I work with Mike on what to do with some newcomers. And sometimes it's hard. It's hard. I was lucky. God blessed me to only go through that treatment center, only try and do this once. And some people are just in and out. And you go, why can't they just get it? And, and I think Mike tells me that only 5% of the people that try and get sober actually get it nowadays. So if you're in here, you're new, get involved. Because I know that for me, my life would have been so much greater if I would have gotten involved, stayed involved, and carried the message to other alcoholics. If you're, a midtermer, like, I don't know, I guess I kind of am. I really don't even know what to, it's hard for me to describe what I am. Because when you take a 22-year break from Alcoholics Anonymous, what do you call yourself? I don't know. Doesn't really matter. The only thing is that I have today. And if I can be the person that God wants me to be today, then I'll be okay. I don't really, Dave, you don't need to check the time because I'm about done. So with that, thank you very, very much. Thanks to my friends who came out. It means the world to me. For those of you that came. And just thank you very much.